Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Today, I have very special guest, Jeff Williams, on the podcast, who is one of my current Everyday Athlete online clients. Jeff and I have been working together for a little bit over a year now, and Jeff is an operations director with Eli Lilly and proud husband to his wife, Dove, and father to his two daughters, Charlotte and Caroline. And he is a perfect example, and this is really a big reason why I'm excited to have Jeff on the podcast and dig into this and talk about his journey and his path from where he started in his fitness journey to where he's at now. You know, he's a perfect example that you don't need to be a former, elite collegiate athlete or pro athlete to really operate, train, live, and eat like one. We can take a lot of those same principles, the mindset, and apply it to our everyday life and our everyday fitness and really excel at a high level. And it really is a great honor to work with a guy like Jeff because he is one of those guys. He's an elite dude. You know, he takes his shit seriously. He is a guy that I love to pour into because he takes the coaching so well. He is someone who has a growth mindset, who is always willing to learn and grow as he's continuing to age and grow in his own journey as well, which I think is so huge. And dude, you're really setting that example, for us as a group as well, in Everyday Athletes. So, brother, welcome.
Thanks, man. It was a very humbling introduction, so I appreciate that. Glad to be here. Glad to be a part of your program. And, looking forward to talking to you. Looking forward to just kind of catching up and talking through my journey. Yeah,
absolutely, man. And I know you and I have had so many conversations behind the scenes, obviously, coaching, client relationship, but also as friends, and just you coming in here, catching up, talking, hearing about what's going on in each other's lives. I mean, dude, it's just such an organic relationship that we have, and I really am grateful for it, man. And I am really excited to dive into your journey and have others hear and relate to a lot of your own aspects of your lessons and things that you've grown through in your own process. So, dude, right off the bat, growing up, I wanted to ask you, have you always been somebody, who has prioritized your fitness, your training? Has this always been, an important aspect of your life, or is this something you've grown into over time? Let's kind of start from the beginning, man.
Yeah, and this is probably where we're going to diverge from every guest you've had before here and maybe every guest you'll have after me.
Yeah.
I did not grow up training very seriously. I grew up outside Washington, D.C. in the Maryland suburbs. Grew up in a family. My parents weren't athletes, so I didn't really have that influence. My siblings weren't really athletes, or they're a lot older than me, so I didn't really get that kind of, I guess you could say, osmosis of what it is to be health conscious and everything like that. I did play sports, so I started off probably about age 6 playing soccer and baseball. But even as I kind of started out in sports, I quickly, I would say, navigated more towards the role on the team that was more like strategic. Like I played goalie in soccer. I wasn't really like a good field runner. I couldn't didn't have a lot of good ball skills. And in baseball, I wasn't the strongest hitter, but I really like to learn the game. So I really like to learn, if this, then that, and that'll lead to my career path in a little bit, being an engineer. But really kind of just started out not super athletic, but still tried and still participated in team sports, learned the value of it at a young age. And then kind of just fast forward to middle school, going into high school. I played those sports until about high school. And then I went to a high school that is very well known for athletics. So shout out to DeMatha.
Yeah, DeMatha. Ohio State athletes have come from there.
A lot of them, for sure. And going in there as slightly undersized, for my age, and then seeing kids that are being recruited from the area to play D1 schools like Ohio State. Big difference, right? And so I went from being mediocre in the small town team to being no shot of starting on any sort of team. The freshman team would have just blown me away, So, so at that point in my life, I really leaned into my academics, the sciences, the arts. That kind of carried me through high school, all the way through college, honestly. And I started training a little bit in college, but it was complete unawareness to everything. So I was doing all kinds of lifts that made no sense. I was trying to do pretty much everything that you see somebody who's young has no idea what they're doing. That was what I was doing. And I did that a little bit in undergrad, but not seriously. It was a workout, and then randomly I would go back a couple weeks later. No structure, no plan. So fast forward again. Now I'm in my mid to late 20s, working for a few years. As I said, I went to school for engineering, so did a lot of desk work. A lot of that, posture that can lead to lower back pains, things like that. And yeah, I was vacuuming one day, just going about my mid-20s life, bent over, twisted, back went out, and I immediately was in excruciating pain, could barely walk. It was my first real touch of, I'd say, injury, but it wasn't wasn't like created by a sport or by an event. It was honestly created by lack of attention to my body. So I remember there was a moment where I went to the chiropractor, and he had me doing cat-cows and some bird dogs, some very basic stuff for lower back rehabilitation. And the first thing he said is, he's like, you probably injured your back because you don't work out your back. And I literally, like, in that moment, I was
Good
like,
for that doctor.
Yeah, I know, right? And in that moment, I was like, oh, you actually work out your back? And I'm like, so I didn't even know that, and then fast forward again. So I kind of like maintained, but I didn't like really, again, start working out. And then I got into my early 30s, and that's really when I started, I would say, my fitness journey. So it's basically 30 years of, I would say, effectively no real structure to training until I got into it. And then that's really where my journey started. I started off with like the group training classes because my friends were going. So like, the gyms that you probably know about that do like the nonstop hit workouts, rhymes with, oh wait, it doesn't rhyme with anything.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went to that one, and that one was about a year long, but like no progress was made.
Yeah.
I would say substantial because of things that we talked about in the past with like
Constant variation.
Exactly.
No progressive overload. Different every week.
Exactly.
Not regulating high intensity, low intensity.
Exactly.
All the many things and we have to learn that through experience, man. A lot of those things I learned through experience in the very same way.
For sure. So I did that for a little while, about a year. And I mean, it was fun because I did it with a group. And so that's a huge part, I think, of anybody's fitness journey is to have people, like we'll talk about with the community and everything.
Absolutely.
But did that for about a year. Then the pandemic hit. And once the pandemic hit, I had a gym attached to the plant I was at. I was involved in some of the vaccine manufacturing, so I was at work all the time. And so I started going to the gym. And I remember my first workout program was I just literally was watching all the Marvel movies.
Hell yeah.
I Googled
shout out Marvel.
Shout out Marvel. And I just Googled the Captain America workout. And so
you told me this story.
Yeah, so I peeled it off the internet, just started doing it. It was the first time in my life that I had some form of a block of discipline or a progression block, but it wasn't really a regression in there.
Yeah.
It was just straight progression.
Yes.
And so did that for a little while. A guy who I used to work with, who was a collegiate athlete, was an athlete his whole life. He kind of like pulled me aside and kind of took me under his wing. So shout out to Dallas Clark. He's also an Ohio guy.
Nice.
So, but anyway, so he pulled me under his wing, kind of introduced me to, I would say, like more targeted training, not just the random workout that I peeled off the internet. And then from there, that's really where I started to kind of find my training discipline until fast forward another 6 years or so, and then we met. But that's kind of my whole life in a nutshell when it comes to training. So,
nice, man.
Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, I'm not going to be your traditional person that you have on this podcast because I wasn't incredibly gifted. I didn't have a huge influence growing up. I was put in environments that I would say intimidated by the guys that clearly had massive genetic advantages, and also they were just better, disciplined.
Yeah.
And then I went through most of my adolescence not really looking at anything until I got later in life. And that's kind of honestly how I came about. So like, I like to think my superpower right now is I didn't put a lot of miles on my joints. I didn't do a lot of damage to myself at a young age. So now that I'm hopefully wiser and older, I can kind of, use that longevity much later into my life. But anyway.
Dude, absolutely. And especially now that you're someone who has experienced a progressively overloaded program, what does that do for your mindset for your future? How do you view your fitness journey from here? Like how do you view exercise training?
Oh man, that's such a great question. And I think it starts with, I think it starts with discipline, and I had discipline in other ways in life. So going to engineering school, the discipline had to be extremely high.
Absolutely.
On academics, on the study, on, the commitment to learning that field of science. But I didn't really understand how to translate that discipline to other areas of life. And so for me now that I can harness discipline, I can apply it to various elements. Like I can apply it to financial discipline. I can apply it to, the fitness discipline. And I think now what I see with progressive overload is obviously a pathway. So the discipline is just kind of an idea that you're going to do what you say you're going to do at some consistent basis. But now the pathway is really the progression and then the regression that I found since I joined your program. So, I mean, for me now, like looking and going into my future with it, it really comes down to, I want to be able to take that discipline and take the pathway and just do it as long as I can and just maximize the body that I have and influence the people that are closest to me in this world to try to like make them better, make myself better. And, the saying is iron sharpens iron. And I find that more and more, no matter what you do, it's like if you do engineering or you do fitness, like as long as you find like-minded people or people that have experience like you do in developing that pathway for progression regression, I think that's the success.
Absolutely, bro. And I love how you speak to that because it shows that you have that confidence in the runway that you have into the future. And I think that's so important because a lot of us can have that mindset where, we're closed off, or like when we get older, we can't keep training, or like the weightlifting, the training, it doesn't have a purpose for us as we age. But with what you're saying, it's like, no, that is the thing that's going to help us age well. That is the thing that's going to create that runway. And it's basically, dude, like think about how much you have even starting your journey, in your 20s, in your 30s. Like think of the runway you have, man. Like you said, your body's in a great place. Like now that you see the value of the discipline of repetition and how your body can adapt to things. I mean, think about high rocks, man. Like maybe talk about that, like prior high rocks to going through that training to then competing. Maybe walk me through what that felt like, dude.
For sure. And I'll be the first to say this, and I say this when I'm playing board games or anything. Honestly, I'm not very competitive. And so for me, when I see competitions, like I know you lean into them.
Yes.
I mean, you're like, I gotta win. That's bred into you. It's also, I mean, you went through programs like Ohio State where that's like, super high. Everybody in that program, what you had to overcome in your adversity journey, going walk on to scholarship. I mean, you have to be hyper competitive. I've never been that way. I usually only compete with myself in my head, but as far as like taking that and leveraging it. Sorry, I lost the question. What's the question?
No, with high rocks.
Oh, high rocks. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, duh.
Yes. No, you're good.
A competition that I didn't compete at.
Yeah. No, you're good. Bro, I was just asking you because I think it's so cool that you got to experience that where it was like, hey, this is something that intimidates me a little bit.
Yes.
I don't even know if I could do this, but you were open to training for it and creating the runway of progression to get the body in a place to be able to not only like survive it, because that's not what we want to do. We don't want to just like survive these competitions or these races. We want to feel really good, get to the other side and recover and be able to do it again.
Exactly.
Now, obviously with time in between, but you know what I'm saying, man? So I just think it's so cool that you are a real-time example of experiencing that, where it's like, hey, I couldn't necessarily, or maybe I didn't have the body that could do this thing, trained for it, did it, and like maybe describe what that feeling was like.
Yeah, for sure. And so like I said, it wasn't competitive. When High Rocks came up, I didn't even know what it was, first of all. And I think a lot of people are learning now, like as they get into it. And I knew I had elements of what was required because I had been working out for about 6 years at that point. So I felt pretty confident in my body, pretty confident in like my ability to push and pull and do the functional stations. But the running piece, and I think you remember this, I was like, I think the most I've ever ran, if I was like forced to at gunpoint, was like 3 miles, and you got to run like a 10K or 8K, I guess. And so as I started looking into that, I remember you started just kind of like slowly seeping in those running blocks, those running elements into the progression block. And I remember the first time I was like, hey, dude, I ran like 4 minutes and my knees are screaming. And you immediately said, cool, we're going to immediately kind of like back off. I'm going to add these prehab things into your workout. It's all going to be like very low resistance, very low impact, and we're going to build your knees up. And I'll be honest with you, when I first heard that, I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I just thought I was like not built to run. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to do anything. But sure shit, like that plus the zone 2 training and like the strict zone 2, not like the, I'm going to do zone 2, but you're really like in zone 4. But like starting to do that and just slowly building, on that base. I think I started training seriously for it in probably September, and the High Rocks was in November. So 2 months. And I went from essentially couch to 8K for somebody who's like, again, no history of running, no history of any sort of like real serious endurance sport or anything like that. Just kind of goes to show like the power in that very, very slow intentional progression, and also the acknowledgement of when you need to regress in order to progress, which I know is a huge part of the program.
Huge piece, man, because when you listen to the body like you did and we identify those things, it's like, okay, we can take that as feedback. We can then be proactive in our training. We can then start to actually isolate, strengthen the knees, build those up alongside the running. And sometimes, dude, that's what it takes, where like maybe if we go out and try to do something, maybe it's just a little bit too much. We got to do a lesser version of that to get ourselves in the door and then initiate that progression and that runway that I was kind of talking about. And I think that's what's so important, man, about, and that's why I'm so obsessed with progressive overload, dude. Like even as an early trainer and coach, it's like everybody knows what progressive overload is, but 6 years into this game, going on 7, I've seen the nuance in real time. I've seen it heal my parents' body. I've seen it make my parents at 70 years old capable of things they literally could never do before. I've seen clients achieve things that they literally could not do before. And that only happens through repetition. You cannot achieve that when things are changing all the time. It's impossible. So it's like the discipline of the repetition and progression is the key to longevity in a lot of these avenues in your fitness journey. And that's really the big thing that I'm trying to show people, man, is like, if we take this principle very seriously, that a lot of us easily overlook, as much of us did early on in our journeys, it's like this could open up a whole new door for us. And I think it's so cool that you got to experience that, bro.
Yeah, and I think, I touched on like taking discipline and applying it in various elements of life. I think the other piece is, and I was thinking about this kind of, coming up for this event, is setting a standard, but not just setting a standard, but setting a standard that is for you.
Yes.
And then applying your discipline and then using the inputs, which we talk about all the time, to make your standard your default, your standard discipline the default in your life. And there's so many good books on it. The big one is Atomic Habits.
Yes,
I know we talk
love
about that in the
book,
group
man.
chat all the time.
One of my favorite books. That's like really one of the books that made me get just so clear with just the day-to-day, every hour, every input, every habit stacking, all those little things, man, because you realize like you have so much more opportunity, but sometimes we are just so distracted, we don't even see that opportunity. But if we can press pause, if we can be intentional, like we talk about, that's really where we can slow things down and be like, where can we maybe optimize? Where can we maybe adjust this in our day to get that thing done that we otherwise weren't able to, that we really want to get in there? You know what I mean? And you can only do that through intention and reflection.
Exactly. And I think like that's where, like I was saying, I think that when you set a standard, the standard is your expectation of yourself, and it could be for anything. Yeah. It could literally be like,
relationships, financial, fitness.
Exactly. And I think that, creating that and then focusing on the inputs, as you said, will make sure that like your discipline, when applied to the inputs, meets that standard. And if you do that over and over and over again, like I said, whether it's in trying to excel in a technical skill, or whether you're trying to get more fit, or you're trying to accumulate wealth, it's kind of simple. It's hard to do though, but it's very simple, and it's kind of the same framework regardless of what discipline you're talking about.
And that's what's so cool, man. You start to see that trend and that theme, and you're like, how you do one thing can be how you do everything.
Exactly.
As we talk about. And it's really cool because I've found that even with my like financial side of things, like I'll be very transparent. And I think a lot of people could relate to this. It's like, I've only learned how to manage money by messing up and overspending. Same thing with your fitness or eating and nutrition. It's like the only way I learned to get discipline was by maybe overdoing it a little bit too much, too long. And then you have to create a discipline around that. And I found that if you can apply that same framework and mindset, like you're saying, to the discipline of, fitness to finances, that's where I was like, okay, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? I've got to spend less than I earn. I got to eat less than I, or I got to eat less than I burn. So it's like a lot of these themes are very consistent across the board. And I think I really like something that you said earlier, man, where you were talking about like the individual aspect of this journey. And that's something that I think is so underrated, where like we have a lot of external influence, and I'm sure like you felt that as a guy, and like I know I have, where it's like you need to be doing this or you need to be doing that. And like I think that pressure influences a lot of us to take paths that are not for us. And I think what you said earlier was so crucial, where it's like, get clear like on what you want individually, like your values. So maybe speak to how important is that for you to like be very clear on the things you value in your fitness, your finances, your relationships, all of those things.
Absolutely. I think, a lot of people, they talk about know your why, and I actually slightly disagree with that. I don't think it's know your why. I think most people have whys. They have plural reasons for whatever you're pursuing.
Yeah, multiple whys.
And so for me, like when I think about my fitness whys, kind of the top of the list is, and it's going to sound selfish, but it's for me, right?
Absolutely, as it should be. What do we talk about? You got to show up for yourself.
Exactly.
And then you can show up as the best version of you for all these other people, man.
Exactly.
You're your most important individual that you got to take care of.
Exactly. And inside that why is like, Yeah, I mean, like some of it is stress relief. Some of it is that it gives me clarity in the morning. I'm a crazy 5 a.m. guy, you know.
Yep.
Some of it is feeling confident in
Absolutely.
myself and my ability to either do something physically or just even look the way I want to look.
Absolutely.
Then the next tier down after that is for everybody else that I care about, and so it's for my wife, it's for my 2 girls, what they see, the influence I have on their life. On how they're seeing me and how they see themselves, honestly, and what they view as a successful person who's kind of just navigating life, and what they do as part of that.
Absolutely.
Whether that's discipline or whatever. Outside of that, there's also just a straight functional element to it. Perfectly frank, I'm the only guy in my house, so if something heavy that shows up at the front door,
You're the guy.
I got to pull it in the house and not destroy myself in the process.
Absolutely.
So there's multiple layers to my why, and I think when I think about like what motivates me, what drives me, what keeps me going, because we all know that motivation is temporary.
Absolutely.
And the only consistency in that is that overarching why, and constantly grounding yourself in those whys.
Yes.
So that you can maintain that consistency. And so I think that's kind of like what I would summate as like my main motivation and driver.
That's amazing, dude. Because I think, like, to your point, I feel very similar, where I have multiple whys. You guys are a big why. It's like, I can't ever be the coach. I've never believed in that. Like, somewhere I'm going to tell you guys to do one thing, I'm going to live another. It's like everything that I'm telling you guys, it's like I'm living, I got to practice what I preach. So that's like a massive why to me. What you said, like, personally, and just for my own well-being, I know that, like, similar to you, like, when I'm progressing in the training, when I'm seeing progress, when I'm feeling that progress, like, dude, it's so motivating. It gives you so much confidence in your day-to-day and how you show up. So it's like, it's selfish, but it's also selfless in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think that the more you can make that a priority in your life, like, the better version you can ultimately be in your work, as a father and all those things. Maybe speak to that. Like, do you feel like how important is your health and fitness and training and focusing on your nutrition, focusing on all these aspects? How do you think that relates to you showing up as a father and really, like, leading, and how that helps you show up as the best version of yourself?
Yeah, the word I would say is, I think, like I said, I had parents who were really great. They didn't do a lot of workouts that I saw, at least, and it I wouldn't say set me back or anything like that, but I think that there are elements of my health, because I think age range training is a thing that probably could have been improved if I had seen an influence like that. So for me, like, I think of the influence that I set for others, especially like having 2 young girls in the house, and my oldest right now is in competitive in gymnastics, so I know I kind of already had an effect. But like for me, it's about the influence side of that. But as far as like balancing and being a dad and trying to sustain this level of discipline and consistency, I'd say the most important thing, we use this word, you use this word a lot, and I love it, is intentionality. And so for me, like, I know exactly when my spot is. It's conveniently when everybody else is asleep in the morning. And I would say, like, for dads out there, if you're ever struggling, I would start there. I would start, when is the time that you are taking to take care of yourself?
Yes.
And if it is in the morning when everybody sleeps, like, it sucks, but caffeine exists. And like, that's,
you got to do what you got to do.
I would say you got to do what you got to do. Also prioritize sleep.
Yes.
That's important too.
Yes.
But I do think that you got to be intentional about when are you going to do this?
Yeah.
And how are you going to do this? Another little hack that I do is, I work and I do a lot of my one-on-ones, or I try to, by walking. So I'll just be like, hey, you want to walk for this one-on-one? And right there, I can usually get maybe a mile in half an hour. And so that, talk about
habit stacking,
right? And getting those little wins throughout the day. And then it's not just about the workouts. It's about at home, what are you cooking in the kitchen? In fact, are you cooking in the kitchen?
Yep.
Are you just bringing in a bag from somewhere outside? Because then, your kids will see that, and that will become their standard. That will become nutrition to them. Whereas if they see you cooking whole, real foods, having nutrient dense, having, a lot of color on the plate.
Yeah.
I mean, by osmosis or by force, they will eventually start to ingest that, and that'll become their standard. And so, for me, it's really about trying to set up, as a dad, them to be absolutely the best people they can be, not just in terms of fitness and nutrition and holistically,
absolutely,
but as far as the things I can walk the walk every single day. I think that's kind of how and where it starts with me with the kids.
I love that, man. And no, I love that you can speak to that, because those motivations, you speaking to it, obviously as a father, is much different than me speaking to it. It's from your own personal experience living that. And I think that it's just so cool because a lot of dads can relate to that. And I know that even me not being a father, like I very much so, that's one of my whys is just like how I show up, how I lead the people in my community, Chris and my family even. So, dude, I think that that's so huge. And what I was going to ask you, man, is, you talked about that turning point of going from in your journey of like going from unstructured to more structured training. I would love to get an idea from you. What made you decide that a more structured, hands-on, kind of coaching approach was the answer versus just, finding, say, another fitness app to follow or another program to follow? What really motivated you to step into that structure like you've been talking about?
For sure. And what's interesting is as I think about that question is I started off my fitness journey kind of like I mentioned when I formally, I'll say, kicked it off in my 30s. I was going to a hyper-structured class. Yeah. They told you exactly what to do. Right. They said, get on the rower, get on the run, do this stuff on the weight station. So it was structured, person-led in class. But as we also talked about, macro-wise, it was unstructured. And what I mean by that is like class to class, week to week, month to month. There was no journey, no roadmap. And it wasn't personalized at all. Like you just show up and you did it. And maybe there were some regressions or some, different variations you could do, but like it wasn't like, okay, well, what's exactly important to you? I kind of backed off of that when I was in COVID and I was in the gym in the place I worked at, and I literally just took something off a piece of paper, like off the internet, which is, those celebrity workouts are probably not realistic anyway, because who has the time to do all that? And then I slowly started kind of eking my way into like, okay, I paid for a couple week-long program. I did that. I eventually got an app, which I followed for about 3 years, which is AI-driven. So it's very, some would say, does all the work for you, right? Why do you need a person? It had like a little algorithm that would look at how much fatigue does it estimate I have had on my muscles, and then it would kind of like, dance around that. And it had lots of settings that made it feel like it was set it and forget it. But what it didn't do is it didn't give me a journey or roadmap. So anybody who knows me knows I like to try to at least fake an analogy. And the one that I want to use here is like, it's like a TV show, right? A workout is like an episode, and an app is a lot like maybe it can recreate or can kind of fabricate a season for you. But in your life, you're looking at a multi-season show, hopefully. And
I love this analogy.
And you want this season to go on for decades. And you want you as the main character to develop and not become a boring show that like after the 5th season, we've seen it over and over again. And I think the only way that you can get to that is you have somebody in your corner kind of like helping you navigate the storyboard season to season. And I've never seen, and I don't think there ever will be, AI or otherwise, an app that can do that. And I think that's where when I joined with you and I noticed this hyper attention to me and my journey and my preferences, and also the curveballs. The AI app will only, or any app for that matter, will only provide you the inputs that you provide it. I would have never told that app, hey, I want to do a high rocks, because I didn't even know it existed. And so by being a part of your team, being working with the others in the group, you kind of get these, I'll call them like, okay, this is a technical word, but like stochastic or random introductions of things that you didn't think of, and then you take that challenge and you execute on it, and now you're like in a better place that you didn't even know existed. And so I do think that like when you take those canned programs, whether they be prescribed or whether they be through something that feels somewhat random, I think you need to be very cautious about that.
For sure, bro. For sure. And dude, I think that that's awesome because you spoke a lot to what that journey was like, the motivation, to get the structure. Maybe walk me through where were you at prior to joining Everyday Athlete, and then how has Everyday Athlete changed your journey for you, especially going from maybe just talk about where you were before that and then how that really helped you.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said before, I was using an app. I was kind of doing my own thing, headphones in, lone wolf in it. My training partner who I mentioned earlier, he had moved to a different state. So I was like a couple years now at this point in the gym on my own, just kind of following the app, like hoping the AI was working right. Yep. And then, when I heard about you on another podcast, shout out Jeremy Scott. We know he's the man. Yep. But when I heard about you on that podcast and I started looking into like what you were all about, and we talked and kind of our introduction meeting, I decided to give it a go because I was sort of at this point like sort of going through this like this hamster wheel of like AI generated workouts, and I didn't feel like I was having a true like, I mean, I was progressing kind of, but it was also like progressing without that multi-season approach. And then coming into the program, I realized that there were a lot of things that I was missing because once again, like you're only as good as the inputs into those apps or those programs, and you don't really realize what you're missing. And so then I realized what I was missing, which really in large part was the regression piece, because I never really even, I kind of knew about rest days, but I didn't really understand the concept of progression, then regression to progress further.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the game changer for me, at least. In addition to that, actually having a community, because like I said, before that, I was talk to nobody in the gym. I got to get this done in an hour. I got to get to work, headphones in. Now, like I still do that, frankly, because, but now at least I can go home. I can crack open my phone, look at the app, and see what the guys are up to, and we are constantly bouncing ideas off of. We're all constantly kind of in a similar state of being sort of individuals on our own journeys, but then we have this community. And so for me, like that plus the progression regression tethered to your tailored like attention to me is like, it's not even like it's a night and day. It's like universe A, multi-universe B kind of thing.
I appreciate that, bro. No, and I love that you can speak to that, dude, because it's very real. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that. And another question that I was going to ask you is, how has it been having a program built completely around your lifestyle? You know, think about your schedule, your family, your job. It's very dynamic.
Yeah.
So how has this helped you, and how has it changed the way you approach training?
Absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, I think it allows me to feel like I'm in control of my own journey, but I have like a cabinet member. And so, everybody who's of high influence, of heads of state, things like that, they all have cabinets. And they have cabinets for a reason, because those experts have seen whatever they are an expert in thousands and thousands of times. Whereas this leader, this person who has the cabinet, like the president, for example, has probably only seen that journey one thread, one time. So I've only been on my fitness journey one time with very limited information. And with you, I feel like I have this person who sees multiple threads of fitness journeys happening. And so by having kind of that cabinet member in my corner, I think it really helps me feel confident that I'm in control of my own journey, but I have somebody kind of looking over my shoulder who has seen thousands of other journeys and when I'm like, I'm doing this for the first time, you can tell me, hey, I've actually seen this done 100 other times, and I know you're on the right track. Or you can tell me, hey, maybe we're going to go this way because I've seen this go down 100 times and it doesn't go well 99% of them. So let's go this way.
Let's go this way. Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, it's the benefit of having that tailored approach is that, yes, I'm still in control. Like, yes, you're still asking me, what do you want to do? What's next? But then once I tell you what's next, you can give me a very tailored, like custom plan that says like, okay, I've seen somebody want to do this and here's how we're going to do it. And I think Hyrox is a great example of something exactly like we kind of talked through.
Absolutely, man. No, absolutely. And man, something we were talking about even before we hopped on here live was this whole idea of mindset being the driver of a lot of this progression we're talking about. And something I've told you and very transparently, I've had conversations with elite former athletes, man, who are truly convinced that their body is ruined, that it's over for them, that there's no chance to train like we're training right now, or do the things that we're doing. And I think a lot of people feel like there's prerequisites to doing something like this, to taking part in a journey like this. So what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're coming back, that's a journey that many people have done before, and there's lots of examples out there of people who have been able to recover, maybe even return to their former prowess, maybe not. But I think the important part is, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is you got to set a standard that is tailored to you at that point in time. Not the standard that maybe you were pre-injury or when you were 19 and you were crushing it on the field. It needs to be the standard that you have today, but it needs to be a standard. Yeah. And then if you follow that standard, guess what happens? You grow that standard a little bit, and then you grow it a little bit more, and you grow it a little bit more. And maybe it's not the same slope, or it's not the same progression that you had when you were going from 15 to 19 and you were like, just growing so rapidly. But like, as long as you get back on that journey and you just let time do its thing, compounding interest. We talked about the similarities. It's the same on the body, right?
Yes.
And so little adjustments day after day, giving it the time, will eventually get you back to where you are. And I think the mindset thing is all about that growth mindset. And for me, there's kind of two things that I would say about that. The first is you have to constantly be seeking what you're learning next. As soon as you think you've learned everything, you've probably just,
Close yourself off.
You probably just start going backwards, honestly. And so I think as long as you keep some form of education in your life, whether it be a podcast, even something as simple as that when you're walking, rucking, mobility at work, driving to work, whatever it is, or if it's actually like you join a group and you join a group of like-minded people who also want to grow. I think having that ability to constantly push yourself to grow. And then the second thing I was going to say is that I think it's also about who you surround yourself with.
Yes.
If you surround yourself with people who don't have a growth mindset, who don't have a mindset that you can, the optimisms, right? The optimistic people in the world, then you are naturally going to gravitate towards that mindset. And so, there's a saying that Jeremy on his podcast says all the time, which is you can't choose the people around you, but you can choose the people around you. And so I think that saying is really just saying like, there are some situations that you're in where you can't necessarily pick who you have to interact with, but you can be very, back to the word intentional about who you spend your time with, who you focus your time with. And if you surround yourself with people who are ultimately killers and optimists and trying to improve 99,000 out of 10,000, 100,000 times, you're going to be improving.
Yes. Like, dude, where the mindset goes, action follows. And I think it's so important to hear that. And that's something that I preach all the time is like, if you just give yourself that runway, like you've given yourself, and you just take your time, it doesn't have to be all out right off the bat.
Right.
It's all about meeting yourself where you're at that stage of life, no matter what. And then just slowly being patient and rebuilding from there. And I think that that's so important. And I think it goes hand in hand with kind of what I was saying there in that question. And then even earlier where, a lot of people think, they have to be an elite athlete or they have to be, an elite former collegiate athlete to be part of the Everyday Athlete program.
Yeah.
So maybe what would you say to that person as well?
Yeah. I mean, look at me, right? Like I kind of went through my background at the beginning and sort of where I started with, and then the environments I was in where I felt completely like I will never be like these guys, I'll never be this elite level. And I would say today, like I'm still not at an elite level, but I am way better than I was even in my mid 20s when, physically, genetically and anatomically, I should be at my peak. I'm way better now. And I'm approaching 40. And so for what I would say to that person is like, it's all about you on your own journey. And it's all about what you can do tomorrow, today, the next hour. And if you focus and you control those inputs, the results will follow. And I think like, even in my world, like I've taken a lot of what I've developed through the last couple of years on my fitness journey. And I've just kind of been, I would say like slowly but surely maybe influencing people around me. Like even just this week, people I work with, they're starting to bring in protein bars. They're starting to challenge me on the macros on my own protein bars. I'm making little splits for them. And so, it's like, it's just, the iron sharpens iron thing all over again. But it's really like, if you've never been there at this elite level, it doesn't mean that you can't get there. It just means maybe it wasn't your time in life,
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. And dude, I love what you said there too about the impact that you're having to the people in your community and your circle, because that's probably one of the most fulfilling things for me to hear from clients. And you haven't been the first one to tell me that, and I'm grateful for that, where I've created this community of guys who are leaders in their own lives. And what's so cool about that, man, is like it creates this tree branch effect where if I can positively impact you guys and teach you these things and pour into you guys, you can then pour into your families and the people in your circles and your communities. And then you guys are seeing that trickle out, and multiply. And dude,
Absolutely.
I think that is a mission well done. You know what I mean? When we can truly create that ripple effect of positivity in our lifestyle, in how we show up, and the standard ultimately that we set. You know
Absolutely.
what I
Yeah. I think it's very real, and it's obviously almost impossible to map it, but I mean the effects that you've had and other people have had on me, and then the things that I'm starting to notice even in a short time frame. I'm talking like less than a year. I'm getting, people that I like I said, I work with every day are doing workouts. They're sending me like the pictures, you know, shout out Spencer, keep going.
Yes.
But you know,
I love
like,
it.
Like they're just like, they're embracing this type of energy
Yes.
that ultimately is, you know, it radiates from people like you, because you guys are, you're a mainstay. You do it day in, day out. You do it with many people at a super high level. But you know, that radiation just kind of carries through the people that you work with that take it, you know, that take it seriously and kind of apply it regardless of where they are in their journey or just in life.
Absolutely, man. No, I really appreciate that, Jeff. That's amazing, man. And I feel like something I really want to talk about is more about you and your journey. And
Sure.
I would love to kind of get a sense of, what does your training, nutrition, lifestyle look like now on a day-to-day basis, maybe on a weekly basis? Maybe just walk us through it. I think it'd be cool for other guys, you know, who are very similar to you to hear, you know, kind of what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? What does it look like on a weekly basis?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is it's not perfect, right? And I think that's by design, because if you try to achieve perfection, you're going to end up very disappointed, and you're probably going to go back to that all or nothing mindset.
Absolutely.
And so the first thing I'll say is not perfect, but what it is it's good most of the time.
And consistent as hell.
And consistent. And so for me, you know, back to kind of like, you know, the habit stacking and things like that, I try to make things as simple as possible. So for me, like my lunches at work, I tend to bring in the exact same, you know, things that are easy to make, pretty good on the macros, are, you know, with a balance between real and processed, but try to hit that 80-20 and try to get me spearheaded through the day so that I can say I loaded up, you know, like my protein content up front, and then at dinner I can maybe go a little more carb or whatever I need to do. As far as nutrition, I talked about this earlier. My family and I, we very rarely eat out. We have like a little pizza night every Friday night, but realistically, like that's pretty much the only time we're eating something that's made like potentially at a restaurant. All the other times, we're cooking at home, and it's chicken, it's lean beef, it's potatoes, which you turn me on to those and I can't turn them off.
Yep.
But you know, it's the simple things in life that grow out of the ground, that run, that fly, that swim, that kind of stuff. And if you just do that, like, you know, that we do that 5 days a week, Friday night's pizza night, Saturday, Sunday, maybe a few drinks, you know, in moderation, all of which logged. Yes. I'm not just saying that because I'm here, but like, you know, all in moderation. And then you go back to it, and it's all in balance is what I would say. And so for me, it's like try to make the recurring things like lunch at work as easy as possible. And that's where it gets back to standards. Like the standard is for me, I'm bringing in my beef stick, my protein bar, my 2 scoops away,
Nash
and
bar.
my apple, and whatever else I got. Yeah. But you know what I'm not gonna do? I'm not gonna say yes to the donut that somebody brings in. I'm not gonna say yes to, you know, the cake that's the celebratory cake. Like I'll be there for the celebration, but I just have that standard, and I just kind of follow it. And if, you know, I get tempted, I just, you know, sip my electrolytes and I keep rolling. But I do think that like that having those habits on the main days, because that's right there, 5 out of 7 of my lunches are right there, right? And then dinners, very similar. I buy the big pack of chicken. I've changed the seasoning I put on it, which dramatically changes what meal I can make with it, whether it's Mexican or Asian or American, whatever. But like, it's still pretty much the same thing going in day after day. And so for me, like you said, it's that consistency. It's that acknowledgement that on a Friday night, I'm not going to be a monk. You know, I'm going to have my pizza. I'm going to have a couple glasses of wine with my wife.
That structure gives you that freedom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, I'm sure you've talked about it all the time, but that's that. And then the last thing is, you know, it's a pain in the butt, but it's, I think, well worth it, is tracking.
I do too, man.
Because if you track, and eventually you get pretty good at it, and you can, you know, do the intuitive eating to some extent, but like if you track it, it won't lie, and it will tell you when you're starting to cheat on yourself or cheat on that discipline and standard. And I think that I've now been I've been with you now over a year, right? And I've been tracking.
You've been consistent
every
man.
single day, pretty much. You know, and I think that if you track, you will then start to see what we talk about all the time, which is that calorie balance, and it'll tell you, hey, you know, too many red days, you know, too many overages.
The data doesn't lie.
Exactly. And so I think that if you combine the simplicity of making the meals as surefire, as easy as possible, and then you compound that with the accountability piece, which is getting in, clicking, and logging in what you ate, I think eventually like it'll all kind of converge to that consistency, and then you'll see the results, no doubt.
Dude, absolutely. And I think it's really timely that we're talking about this because, and I've shared this with you guys and I've been posting about it, but like I'm in that period right now where I'm kind of re-engaging that discipline with tracking where I don't even know if I told you this, but dude, I probably tracked for like, and some days off, some days off, some weeks off, but like for the better part of like 5 years straight, like about 5 years straight of tracking. And then toward the end of last year was like the first time in about 4 to 5 years where I really pulled back and I'm like, I'm going to do this a little bit more intuitively.
Yeah.
I'm going to be more mindful. I'm going to take all these reps I put in and take that approach. And it's not like I took massive steps back, but I would say that slowly just started to gain some weight and like slowly started to gain some fat, just like little bit by little bit. And before I knew it, my weight kind of slid up a little bit toward the beginning of 2026. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need to re-engage this and lock back in and get a sense of where am I really at versus where do I think I'm at. And re-engaging that practice, man, was so eye-opening because it's something that I've already done, and here I am revisiting it again.
Yeah.
But it's so eye-opening nonetheless, and it's showing me it's like, oh, all of those little snacks, all of those little times where I would go throughout the day where I wasn't like really hungry, I was like kind of maybe just like bored, but you're just going and snacking. It's like that's the difference.
Yeah.
And I found that a second time.
Yeah.
Re-engaging into this practice. And I think that that's really what it reveals, man. And that's why I'm a big fan of it. I believe it's something everybody should do at least for a short amount of time at some point in their lives because it's so educational and you'll learn so much about what you're actually consuming.
Yeah.
And I think the other eye-opening thing too is it shows you the volume of the food that you're working with, where certain foods are, you can eat a lot for very little calories,
Right.
and then you can also eat very minimal food for a lot of calories. And I think that like you really only learn that through that practice. And I think for you, man, what's so cool is you've had such a long journey yourself so far. What do you feel like you've learned the most? And I'm kind of throwing you a curveball here, but like, what do you feel like you've learned the most about nutrition?
Yeah, I think the what I've learned the most is that there's a balance like we talked about, and I think that inside of that balance you need to find creativity to stay standard and to stay consistent. And I think that there are some foods that you don't have to eat to be fit, right? And there are some foods that you can eat that would be quote unquote unhealthy or unfit, and you can still be fit.
Yes.
But it all comes down to that balance.
Yes.
And it all comes down to understanding more detail about what is inside of what we eat.
Yes.
So like,
That's huge.
Yeah, it is. And I think like, a lot of people will see 2 hamburgers and they'll be like, oh, okay, equal protein, equal fat. No. Like, it's like the details. It's like, is that a 93.7 or is that 85.15? Is that 85.15?
Massively, and it could be the same amount of food.
Exactly.
Massively different calorically.
Yeah. And so for me, it's like learning the details. And you know how I learned all those details and people at work make fun of me because I like literally know how many calories are in a banana or whatever. But like, it's because I tracked.
Yes.
And when you track, you learn a lot about the macronutrients of everyday foods. And you can learn, even if you're not tracking, how to tailor what you're eating to still kind of fit whatever envelope you need, whether you're, increasing weight, decreasing weight, trying to go heavier on fiber and protein, whatever the mix is that you're going for. If you put in the reps, like everything we talked about, if you put in the reps, eventually it just becomes like intuitive knowledge, almost like gut feel, and like you kind of know 4 ounces of chicken, you pretty much know what that looks like,
Yes.
right? And roughly the macros in that. And so for me, I would say the biggest thing I learned about nutrition is the more you understand what's inside food, the better. And it also, in a way, kind of keeps you away from things that you don't know about. Because if I'm like, I don't really know what's in that, like I don't really want to have to log it and figure it out. I'm just not gonna eat it.
Just stay away from that. Yeah.
So maybe there's a little bit of like exclusion principle there as well.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I will say one analogy that comes to my mind because I said I'm full of analogies.
Yeah, I love it.
But when you're
the one about the episodes, because bro, I think about analogies because progressive overload is such a difficult thing to explain in its like principle. And I love what you said there earlier about the episodes. I thought that was great because it's so true. It's like a workout, or something that is random. It's like that really is just like you're watching an episode here or there, but you have no context.
Yeah.
So it's like there's nothing that's building.
Right.
But it's like when you see that whole season.
Yep.
that's like a whole training block.
Yeah. And then the next season has to build off the previous
Build off
season.
of that. Yeah.
And you know how the seasons end and you know how the seasons start.
Right. You do.
Starts low, ends high.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
All right. So if that one was a hit, this one might not be, but I'm going to try.
I love the analogy.
So you're talking about tracking, not tracking, and then watching things slip. And what came to my mind there is language.
Yeah.
So people who are bilingual or multilingual, when they stop speaking it, even if they grew up with it, they start to forget little words here and there. And then eventually, they say use it or lose it. And I think the same thing applies to tracking. Like even if you were fluent as anybody else in the whole world when it came to tracking, as soon as you stop tracking, it's like you leave that country and you're not speaking that language day in, day out. And like, you may not even realizing it, but subconsciously you just probably forgot a word.
Yeah.
And whoop, that was an extra bite that you took that you didn't track. And so for me, I'm thinking like when maybe next time when somebody asks you like, why do I have to keep tracking or why do I maybe periodically have to track? It's because it's like refreshing something like knowing a second language.
Yes. And it shows like I needed it. And I do want to get the point across that like, could I have maintained a very good physique? Yes. But it's like, again, standards. Like I want to be leaner. So it's like for my standard, I'm going to have to track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. Like it's not something that I feel is like, obviously it's inconvenient at times, but it helps you more than it's hindering the situation. And it gives you so much. And that's how I feel. And I know it's how you feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And like when you asked me the question earlier about like somebody who's not an elite athlete and how do you start, I think the one thing I want to go back to real quick, because this just reminded me of it, because as I'm like, track everything you eat. It's like, you got to start shallow end. And that's another Jeremy reference there, shallow and deep end. And what I mean by that is like, when you want to do something that you have these aspirations to be, fit and nutrition focus and all this, you have to start with things that are very tangible and very easy for you to do. So it may not even be tracking. It may just be like you try
Switch
to
one meal.
Yeah, switch one meal. Always put something green on your plate. Shoot, maybe eat your salad first because we know that's filling with the fiber, and that's going to maybe prevent you from eating an extra helping of whatever carb or fat is, or
Very highly palatable in front of you.
Right. And so what I would say is like, as you're trying to like start the journey and whether it's the details of tracking every day or whether it's hitting a workout 7 days a week, if that is your expectation on day one and that is your standard on day one, like your likelihood of fail is extremely high.
Right.
And so I think like just like even like progressive overload, but even taking that approach when it comes to
nutrition,
entering anything, I think is really important, like nutrition.
Dude, it's a universal principle. That's why I love that. Like progressive. I did a whole podcast episode on this podcast about progressive overload. And I really did apply it to, it literally can be applied to everything, man. Like everything requires a starting point and then giving yourself time and patience to build on top of that starting point. And over time, man, you can accomplish massive things, but you got to start. And that's the biggest thing. And it's something that I bring into the coaching, man, where it's like, I'm never going to tell a client, you got to work out 6 days a week. You got to work out 5 days a week. I'm like, what can you do? What can you absolutely do? Dude, I have guys like Daniel. He's one of the most dialed guys like you in the group. And like, dude, he's a business owner, owns a landscaping company, busy, like super busy lifestyle, got a lot of dynamic moving pieces. And it's like, dude, he's doing 2 days a week right now. But guess what? He's maximizing the shit out of those 2 days. So it's like, whatever we can do, take that and run with it. If it's 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, start you there, and then you can always add more as you go. But I think it's just being smart with that starting point.
And then knowing when it's too much.
Yes.
Like, because there will come a point if you keep progressing and you don't regress, where you're redlining and your body starts to just kind of break down.
That's one of the biggest things I have to help guys with, man. Because it's hard for us. It's hard to be like, okay, we got to pull back. That's part of the process. It's like, no, that's just as important as the hard days, as the days you're pushing, the weeks you're pushing, and the weeks you're peaking. And dude, it's one of the hardest things for us guys to understand. But it is something that I see being on the front lines with a lot of guys. It's like, that's one of the hardest things to get across. And you almost have to like, and I know I'm like that. Like I'm stubborn to a degree where it's like, I had to run myself into the ground. You know what I mean? Like I truly, like I had to spend weeks where I'm redlining, cortisol's through the roof. I'm waking up in the middle of the night. And it's like, oh, maybe I really do need to take this shit seriously. Or getting like your results, like blood results, hormone results. It's like, maybe I should take those recovery days seriously. So it's like, it really does, when you can see the bigger picture and you can understand, where the low intensity feeds into the high intensity, the progressions, all that stuff, man, I think it's huge. And again, progressive overload, it truly just applies to everything. So yeah,
for sure.
man.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, bro, you're an operations director with Eli Lilly, husband, father. You got a lot of moving pieces in your own life.
For sure.
I was going to ask you, how do you balance all of that, and how do you still show up for your health, your fitness, your nutrition, tracking? Like, dude, like, guys, and I tell you this often, like, the dads in the group, you guys very much so motivate me. And I look up to you guys in a big way, and you guys really motivate me. You're a huge why for me, because it's like, they can do it, why the hell can't I? You know what I mean? And I think that's what's so cool is like the way that you show up, the way you juggle all of those variables in your life, and you do it with a smile on your face, dude. And like Zach, who I had on the podcast, very similar. We had this very similar conversation. So it's very cool to just see you guys just setting that example, man, because I have so many conversations about this stuff, and it's like very cool to see you guys fighting against this very real narrative of, just let yourself go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to let life take over, right? And I think for me, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but like if you're intentional about when your non-negotiable is, and for me, it's like I start at 5, I work out till about 6:15. That hour for me is sacred almost at this point. And I think for me, at least, what has really helped, and shout out to my wife, Dove, who I love, she's very supportive. And so like, having people who support the balance that you want to achieve is so key. And you can change that prioritization in your life over time, but as long as it's always somewhere in that priority and you create that non-negotiable space, time, etc., to do the work, I think that's how I create the balance in my life. I also used to work out on weekends, and then I realized that was in direct conflict with the priority with my kids.
There you go.
So the other thing I would say is, don't just decide on a program or a schedule or whatever, and then just like be
dead set,
hell bent on it. Exactly.
This is a great point.
You got to
teach this to my guys.
You got to adjust, and
be dynamic.
And like if
you got 7 days to get 5 workouts,
right?
You got 7 days to get 3 workouts.
Exactly.
That's the mindset.
Exactly. And so I think knowing where you can pull those levers. And where you set those boundaries and kind of hold those non-negotiable times, for me, is super important. So like I said, I work out super early in the morning. Like you mentioned, I have kids, so I come home, from the workout, get the kids ready. My wife does most of the work. I just kind of, shuttle them to school, but then get to work, put in my hours, do my best while I'm there, being present in all stages. So be present at the workout,
every stage, man.
Be present with the kids, be present at work, and then when work's done, be present with the kids again and the family.
That's hard to do.
And then rest. And that's another one that's really difficult, I think, for guys that have careers, have families, want to be fit, all three, right? Trying to get the trifecta, is like you have to know when to cut it off. You have to know that it's 9:30. I maybe have a couple emails to read. Who gives a shit? The emails will be there tomorrow anyway. And just go to bed, you know? And being able to reset your body and give yourself that chance to win doesn't set you back in that hole the following day. And then you start, accumulating your sleep debt. And then by the end of the week, now you're like, I'm just so exhausted, I'm not going to go to this workout. Well, guess what? In a way, you kind of just failed that consistency test, but you failed it not that one day. It was the days leading up to it where you didn't maintain that balance.
Yes. And dude, that's so important. And I think like having that dynamic approach is so crucial. And I see that. And I think a lot of people are hindered by that, where it's easy to, the schedule got in the way or this got in the way. And it's like, if you can be proactive and or even reactive in a certain respect to that week, where it's like, hey, maybe I couldn't do it today, but I know I can do it tomorrow, or maybe I can pivot this to a different day.
Exactly.
And dude, it's kind of ironic. You were talking about your schedule of like doing the weekends versus the weekdays. Like I'm kind of the opposite right now, but I know if I had a family, it would go back.
Yeah.
Cause like for me, I'm like, I have days during the week where I take my rest days, and then I work out on the weekends when it's like, I got time and I'm relaxing. And I'm listening to you say this. I'm like, that's why he's doing the weekdays and why he can't do the weekend. So it just goes to show you that it's also very individual, and you got to find what works for you.
Absolutely.
And be ready to change it when life happens.
And know what the signals are, like read the room, right? Like when I used to do like these crazy long leg days with a buddy of mine, shout out Dante. He's amazing. But like I used to do these leg days with him, and it was like all of my Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And so then I got home, and I then would have to cut the grass, do the stuff around the house.
Like
and it's like, where are my kids and my wife in that equation? You know what I mean? And so I realized that at some point I was like, you know what? Like the legs days got to be not Sundays. Like they just can't be. So I think that's where, like you said, you kind of got to realize what is recalibrate your priorities.
What is the priority?
Recalibrate what other non-negotiable times have kind of already been blocked out. Like if you have a job, if you have time with your family already pre-allocated, and then strategically with intention, pick your spots and then execute. Just execute on those spots.
Absolutely, man. No, I love that, Jeff. And bro, I was gonna ask you, and I feel like you said this even at one point in the episode, and it's probably a lot to do with your whys, but what do you tell yourself on those days where it'd be easy to skip or it'd be easy to cut corners?
Yeah.
What do you tell yourself? How do you kind of get through in those moments?
Yeah. For people who know me personally, believe it or not, most days I don't want to fucking go to the gym. Like most days I wake up
very
at
real.
4:30 and I'm like, oh my God. Okay, a couple things. The first thing is remember the feeling after the gym. So when you go into the gym, it sucks. You're tired, whatever, right? And you're trying to like fire yourself up, music, whatever you got going on. But I've never left a workout being like, that wasn't worth it. Almost every single workout ever, I've been like, I'm glad I did it. And so try to remember as soon as you wake up that you will feel good at the end of the workout, that you will feel accomplished. You will feel like you can, tackle something else. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is, and I shit you not, I mumble this to myself when I do Bulgarian split squats. I say to myself, I get to do Bulgarian split squats.
Yes.
Not I have to, not someone's forcing me to. And, as most people know, we love to hate them.
Yep.
But like, if you tell yourself, like even like self-talk, whatever, if you tell yourself, I get to do this because there are people who don't get to do it, and again,
Powerful perspective.
it is a powerful perspective, but it's one that if you can remember to reiterate that to yourself, it can be in that moment a flash of motivation to go in.
That's all you need is just to show up.
It's exactly right. And then the other thing is, back to habit stacking, but like make it easy, right? Like put your workout clothes. I put my workout clothes right where my feet hit, so that as soon as my feet hit the ground, I literally in the blind, because I'm blind without glasses, I reach down, I pick it up, and I walk to the bathroom. Like I'm ready to roll. So I would say make it easy. Do all those little things, almost like little like breadcrumbs, if you will, on your journey to the gym. This is another little hack I did in my house, thanks to my wife for letting me do it. But I took one of those like little key ring hooks that you can hang up, to hang your keys.
Yeah.
And that's actually where I hang like my whey protein,
Nice.
like little containers. And so I pre-fill those up on Sunday, kind of like a meal prep, if you will. And so then when I'm getting ready for work, I don't have to like fumble with the scoops or whatever. I just grab that, link it onto the shaker cup, hit the almond milk, and off I go. And so like,
Making it easy, lowering the barrier. Yeah.
But yeah, like you just take the perspective, take the gratitude of like the fact that you get to do this and that you get to exercise your body and you get to improve yourself as a gift, effectively, even if it's cold and it's rainy and you're slightly sick. Just accept that as a gift that you get to do it. Remember that you probably will feel good at the end, depending on the workout.
Yeah.
and then just, like we said, lower the barrier, make it almost like hard to miss in terms of little things that will keep you going. This is going to sound cheesy, and I don't know, maybe I'm the only dude in the world who does this, but I like have a theme song that I pick once in a while.
The music, it can get you in that mode.
And I'm like, I'll pick it the night before, I'll like hear a song, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to fucking, and then I'll tee that up on my Apple Music. I get in the car, hit it. Or maybe I need like a little bit of a slow and I'll put on a podcast. Focusing on few people that really can influence you is huge. And I think that like if you have somebody who you can listen to like this podcast, for all those guys out there who are maybe, doing something right now, listening to this, even having something as kind of just not very brain heavy as listening to like a podcast can like really just help get you going.
Absolutely, bro.
So yeah, those are all little things I do.
No, I love it, man. I love it. And I really have like two final questions for you, bro.
Yeah.
And what I really wanted to ask was, going back, think back to like when you were maybe just getting started, or even some of those pivotal moments where maybe you were struggling. Like, what would you, in your journey, or whether it's in the beginning or even midway through, because there's probably a guy, at that point in their journey too, where you once were.
Yeah.
What would you go back and tell yourself in those moments? What advice would you give your younger self in your journey?
You overestimate what you can do in the short term, and you underestimate what you can do in the long term. I think that quote is probably the most influential quote and most, I would say, prudent quote to the question you just asked. You probably think in the short term you can't do whatever. You can't run the marathon. You can't run the 3K. You can't run a 1 kilometer. But then if you actually put in the effort, do the progressive overload, and you look at yourself in 12 months and you do, say, run a marathon, you will be like, how the fuck did I just do that? And the reason, and it's just because we have this perception that what we can do in the next month is all this, and we get disappointed when we can't do all this. But then if we just stay the course and we stay consistent and we follow the program and we believe in the program, what you will look back on and see later is like, oh my God, like I can't believe I did all of that. And so like I would tell people that like, you know, it's about, you have to imagine yourself maybe not like in 5 days, 5 weeks, even 5 months from now.
Project.
But just imagine like in 5 years from now, if you've never run, for example, you know, a mile, maybe in 5 years you've knocked out 3 Ironmans. And it's totally feasible. In fact, not only is it totally feasible, it's a high likelihood you will do it if you can follow the consistent programming and everything we talked about on this episode.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. And then the confidence that builds, bro.
Yeah.
Like when you go through that process of
For sure.
like you did with High Rocks, and even at multiple points throughout your journey aside from High Rocks, I've experienced that. And bro, I think that is amongst the many whys we talked about. That's a huge why, is the bank of evidence that we've accumulated over years, dude, of training.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know how damn good this makes me feel. And it's like you have that evidence and it really motivates you in the moment to show up. So, bro,
Absolutely.
Last question. What does this next chapter look like for you in your journey? What are you trying to achieve? And we're looking, you just talked about it, looking at the next 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Where do you want to take this journey, bro? What do you see for yourself?
So, I mean, High Rocks was a good intro to endurance training for me. You know, I know where I'm at in life. I know I'm approaching 40. I know that muscle mass tends to atrophy a little bit from here. Not saying I'm going to try to fight like hell to keep it, but like I'm not going to be massive, right? So like for me, my goals right now are longevity training, are staying flexible, staying mobile, retaining strength. If I can look a little better, hell yeah, I'll take it, right? And then a couple challenges. For me, like I think, you know, progressing on High Rocks, I did that solo, like, you know, with the first time I did it, which is so fucking ambitious.
Bro. So impressive. Like think about that.
Yeah.
You just solo freaking race, dude.
I got to get a few more. I do want to do a doubles just for the
it's such a
just
fun
for the
vibe,
camaraderie
dude.
side of it. So I do want to pick up a few challenges. You know, I had some ideas about like maybe doing an ultra endurance thing like an Ironman. So for me, like, you know, looking at that next chapter being like, let's push myself. Let's go into maybe a more in-depth training thing. Because you only get one life, man. You only get one journey in fitness in life. And so, you know, you gotta pick some goals that are maybe a little scary, but like, but you know, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And again, if I were to ask myself at like 12 or whenever I was probably the most out of shape, maybe like my mid 20s, and I'm like, hey, can you ever imagine doing an Ironman? I'd be like, hell no. So anyway, we'll see what happens.
Hey, and I never said I'd be a runner. And dude, like I'm out here running mileage and I love it, bro. And it's like, just be open and be open to a better potential process.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us have had negative past experiences with our fitness and with our health or with training or whatever have you. And it's like, be open to it being different. Be open to it being better and that there is a better process out there.
Yeah. And the last one that I do have in my mind is like, you know, in about 10 years from now when my girls are like actually able to go in the gym, they're old enough, you know, just being able to train with them.
Yes.
Like for me, that's like something that I think about all the time. Because again, I never had that growing up. I think it's actually pretty fun in a way.
Absolutely.
You know, weird way, but like,
absolutely.
But like, I would love to be able to just train with them, help them discover their own strengths, break through their own barriers. And like, I'll never be like you. I'll never be like as detailed of like a coach and everything, but just being able
give
to
them
like
so much of that knowledge, man.
Yeah.
And those habits and everything you've done.
So if I listen to this in 10 years from now and I'm training with them, I'll consider it a win.
Yeah, bro. And I guarantee you will, man. So no, this was epic. We have been looking forward to this. We've talked about doing this for a long time, and this was amazing, bro. I loved every minute of this. I feel like so many people are going to be able to relate to your journey. It's so organic and authentic, and you embrace and embody such a unique mindset, bro. And I don't even think you realize that at times is like you are elite and you operate at that level and you motivate me in a huge way and you motivate me to show up in the way that I show up. And bro, that's what's so cool. You said it, iron sharpens iron. And it's like when you can find that community of reciprocation, of positive reciprocation and growth, it's powerful, bro. And it's like I experienced that as a football player in an elite locker room. And it was my mission and my goal to create this with everyday guys like yourself who share this mindset. So, bro, I'm grateful for it.
I appreciate it, man. And I can honestly say when it comes to like anything related to like fitness, nutrition, you're the first person to ever say I'm elite in it. And to have that come from somebody like you is like massive, massive compliment. And I would just say that like anybody who's listening to this as we kind of close it out, you know, and you're on a journey and maybe you haven't even started a journey. I've listened to in the hundreds, like multiple hundreds of podcasts on exactly this topic. I listen to every single podcast Jeremy Scott put out. I listen to every single Life Rewired podcast that's been put out. I listen to every single one of these, hundreds of podcasts with guests all across the world, you know, and I was just like a dude who didn't know anything about fitness, listening to podcasts, and now I am sitting on one.
Pretty
like,
cool,
talking
man.
about it, like kind of, sort of, like I know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I mean, like that's testament right there.
Testimony.
So like, anyway, yeah, appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for having me here.
Awesome podcast, man.
Yeah, man.